Hi guys, and a happy Valentine weekend to you all, and in honour of this holiday I thought today we would talk about Valentine, a slasher movie released in 2001 directed by Jamie Blanks, who also directed Urban Legend. Valentine follows a group of friends who begin to receive morbid Valentine's Day cards, and as they are slowly killed off one by one they begin to realise that they have been stalked by someone they rejected 13 years ago at a junior high dance. It stars Marley Shelton from Scream 4, David Boreanaz from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Denise Richards from Starship Troopers and Wild Things. So Valentine has a rotten rating of 12% on Rotten Tomatoes and an audience rating of 33%, and on its initial release it was critically panned. David Boreanaz, despite being the lead love interest within the movie, he filmed all of his scenes inside of 2 weeks, and within the film his on-screen girlfriend Kate, while talking to her friend Dorothy, refers to Adam as being no angel. This, of course, is a tongue-in-cheek reference to him playing the character Angel in the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then later its spin-off show Angel. Katherine Heigl, who stars as Shelley in the movie's opening scene, has publicly disowned this film. In a 2005 interview, she claimed that she hates the movie and regrets starring in it. The movie's flashback scene actually holds clues to the rest of the movie's plot. So, for example, the order that Jeremy talks to the girls at the dance is the same order that they are killed in. And the way that they reject him foreshadows their fate later in the movie. Shelley says "in your dreams" and she is killed in a lying down sleeping position. Lily says "ew" and she is sent the box of chocolates with maggots in them. And Paige responds by saying she would rather be boiled alive, and she is killed in a hot tub. Dorothy, of course, lies and accuses Jeremy of assault, and she is later framed for the killings, and Kate kindly says maybe later, and they do in fact dance later in the movie at Dorothy's party, and they end up in a relationship together. Okay, so let's start off with some positives about Valentine, and the first one being that this is a holiday horror, and we're not exactly inundated with these, and I do really like the Valentine's aesthetic of it, especially in the movie's third act at Dorothy's party. I do also really love the movie's message that there are consequences to how we choose to treat people, and that bullying can have long-term and long-lasting effects on people. Now, I'm not saying that everybody chooses to go down the same route that Jeremy does, but I think it's a really positive thing that this movie shines a light on this. And I think that this leads to an interesting storyline, that the boy who was bullied in school and whose life systematically goes off the rail afterwards then decides to seek revenge on the women that bullied him. Another thing that I like about Valentine is that despite it being written by 2 women and 2 men, it is neither kind or forgiving to toxic men or toxic male insecurity. And I do actually like 2 of this movie's leading ladies. I think that both Paige and Kate are actually quite well written and quite likeable, and probably the only characters in this film to be given more than one characteristic. And Kate isn't exactly your typical final girl in a slasher film. She's not the target of the killer in a negative way, and she's also not responsible for the defeat of the villain at the end of the movie. But she is still our pure, kind-hearted final girl. But she's also human. She's given flaws in her character, the main flaw being that she doesn't seem to be able to healthily detach herself from her boyfriend Adam, who at times scares her because of his addiction to and dependency on alcohol. And Paige appears to be a good and supportive friend to the other girls. She actually encourages Kate to break up with Adam because she identifies it as an unhealthy relationship. And while being portrayed as the sexy one in the movie, she does have boundaries herself. Despite coming on to a lot of men, she sets herself boundaries within them. For example, in the art show when she's flirting with Campbell, as soon as she realises that he's there with her friend Dorothy, she stops and apologises. And my final positive for Valentine is the movie's ending and killer reveal. I actually really love the ending of this film, and I find it really interesting and refreshing how Valentine's killer actually gets away with everything and they end up getting their happy ending. It's also interesting that the character of Dorothy, while being part of the main group of women that is targeted by the cherub, she is also responsible for everything that happens in this movie. She is the catalyst that caused Jeremy's life to go off the rails, and on top of that, she's a thoroughly unpleasant pleasant person and not a very good friend to the other women, and because of this the movie punishes her and she is successfully framed for the killings. And while we have what seems to be a traditional slasher ending, the killer is defeated, the mask is pulled off to reveal the identity, and the survivors reflect on the events of the film. And when the audience starts to feel like we're in the calm, safe section of the third act, the rug is actually pulled out from under us as it is revealed that Dorothy wasn't the killer, that Adam was all along, but it's done in such a subtle way that the film never explicitly says that Adam is the killer. So I actually have quite a few mixed aspects about the movie. The first one being the first of the movie's two cold openings, where we are introduced to Jeremy and we follow him as he is systematically rejected by a group of the girls. Now, the editing in this scene can be a little bit nauseating at times, the way it's edited, with sort of jump cuts, but I do like how the scene is intercut with images from a yearbook, which is actually of the actresses that play the older versions, and I think it's a really good way for the characters to be introduced to the audience. But as well as being introduced to these characters, the audience is also introduced to the one characteristic that these women will be assigned for the rest of the movie. You have our mean girls in Shelley and Paige and Lily, you have our insecure fat girl in Dorothy, and we also have our kind-hearted final girl in Kate. Now, I mentioned Kate and Paige as a positive in the beginning, but aside from them, the movie really doesn't do anything to help flesh out these women. And there is literally a scene towards the end of the movie where one of the characters, Dorothy, lists each character and the trait that they've been given. She lists Kate as the popular one, and Lily as the fun one, Shelley as the brainy one, Paige as the sexy one, and herself as the fat one. And like any slasher movie, Valentine does have a lot of red herrings in it. And yeah, this is a trait of any whodunit slasher. It's not them being in it that is the problem. It's the fact that Valentine has what I think one too many red herrings, and the fact that they're not just there as a plot point. They're not just there to cause misdirection. They apparently all have to be a creep as well as being a red herring. They're either underwear sniffers or thieves or liars or con men. And the only quote-unquote good guy in the movie is Adam, and even he is given the dark side of being addicted to alcohol. And the idea of him being the good guy makes him stand out like a sore thumb within the film and brings a lot of unwanted attention on him, which is interesting considering that he's the actual killer of the movie. And another mixed aspect about Valentine for me is that it seems to have conflicting messages, and the movie doesn't really seem to know who it's for. It has a lot of female characters that are unlikable, but in spite of this, the movie still successfully delivers female characters who are both strong enough and capable enough of standing up to the vile men that they come across. And despite being victims of the cherub killer, the film portrays them as not being victims in any other sense of the word. Valentine shines a big ol' light on the inappropriate male behaviour within the movie, but on the other hand, it also has a female character who falsely accuses somebody of assault, and despite finding out how their life has gone off the rails because of this, they refuse to come clean about it. So does the film do this to try and balance it out, to try and show that women can be just as bad as men? Or is the movie's overall consensus that people are generally just trash? And my final mixed aspect about the film is that the kills, while pretty varied, are also pretty tame. Apparently it was the decision of Warner Brothers to reduce the level of violence and gore in the film. But even though I don't generally seek out gore in my movies, I don't need it to be entertained, I do think that the kills need to be memorable enough, they need to stand out enough in your film, especially if you are a slasher movie. But while most of the kills are unforgettable, I do think that they do quite a good job in Ruthie and Paige's death scenes. In Ruthie's, it feels more like a final girl circuit. You have a chase scene and her discovering bodies. And then in Paige's, they do a really good job of building up the suspense and building up the tension. And both of them, it's a pretty gnarly way to go. Okay, now for the negatives of Valentine. And for me, the main negative is just that the majority of characters in this film are just awful. I mentioned in the positives that I quite like Kate and Paige, but aside from them, the other leading women are horrendous. Lily is so vain and self-involved, and Dorothy... Dorothy could quite possibly be one of the most irritating characters I've seen in a film for quite a while. Dorothy has never gotten over her lack of self-esteem after being the fat kid, and she takes these insecurities out on her friends, despite them not behaving in a way that warrants this treatment. There is a point where she verbally attacks Kate, where she's telling Kate that it's most likely to be Adam, and she's spitting poison at her, and when Kate responds by saying it could equally be Campbell, because at the end of the day, what does Dorothy really know about him? Dorothy becomes very aggressively angry at Kate, and also let's not forget the fact that she falsely accused someone of assault and refuses to come clean about it to anyone other than her friends. She's honestly just the worst. And outside of the main group of women, the characters in this film are either there to up the kill count or to be a red herring, and all of them have that typical early 2000s nastiness. And my final negative for Valentine is more just me nitpicking with the plot points in the film, and that is, why did Jeremy not go after the boys that attacked him at the junior high school? Why only go after the women that rejected him? Now, Dorothy, I understand, that girl ruined his life. But why go after the others who only said no? I mean, kids are like that. Kids are cruel. Why not go after the boys that physically beat him to a pulp? Aren't they equally culpable for him being who he is and his life turning out the way it did? I can remember watching Valentine when it first came out, or a couple of years after, and I really enjoyed it. Watching it now, years later, I'm definitely aware of the flaws and the weak points in it, but I think I would still recommend it to people, because while it is a pretty basic and flawed slasher, I think there is enough enjoyment to be found within it that it is still worth checking out. And like I said in the beginning, we're not exactly inundated with holiday horror, so it's nice to have another one to watch. So there you have it, guys, my review of Valentine, released in 2001. I would love to know what you guys think about it. Do you love it? Do you hate it? My next episode should be a review of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that I'm hoping to drop before the release of the new film on the 18th of February. And I will also be doing a review of the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre when that comes out as well. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye, guys.